I helped my husband's struggling student pay her tuition, rent, and bills. Turns out I was paying for their affair. I paid for her tuition, her rent, her laptop, her groceries. I even helped cover her car insurance. Not because I owed her anything, but because I thought I was helping a young woman stay in school. Because my husband told me she reminded him of me, smart, stubborn, and just trying to survive. What he didn't tell me was that he was sleeping with her. And what I didn't realize was that I was paying to keep his mistress comfortable. Let me back up. Dan and I had been married for 5 years. We weren't flashy, but we worked. I made good money in finance, and he was a university professor, charming, thoughtful, idealistic. He loved books, his students, slow jazz, and morning coffee. I loved him for being gentle in a world that wasn't. About a year ago, he started talking about a student, Chloe. She's got real talent, he said. Her writing is raw, personal. You'd love it. At first, I thought nothing of it. He often talked about his students. He cared. That's what made him good at what he did. But then one night, he came home quiet, said Chloe was considering dropping out. She's working 2 jobs, helping her mom with medical bills, barely keeping up. It's not right, he muttered, pushing food around his plate. Something about how he said it got to me. Maybe because I'd been there once too, broke, exhausted, drowning in deadlines. So I asked, "Can we help her?" He looked surprised, then relieved, then proud. He said he didn't want her to know it was from me. She'd feel uncomfortable, apparently. So I wired the money to him, and he said he'd handle it quietly. The first transfer was for tuition. Then came books, rent, a new laptop. One time it was an emergency medical bill. Another time it was car repairs. I never questioned it. If anything, I felt good. Like I was doing something that mattered. But kindness makes you blind. It started small. He began dressing a little nicer. Nothing too obvious, just a shirt that fit better, shoes a little too clean. I joked about it once. Trying to impress the tenure board, he laughed and kissed my forehead. He always kissed my forehead. Then came the locked phone, the late nights, the new cologne, the study sessions on Saturdays. One Thursday, he said he had a faculty dinner. I offered to join, but he said it was just for staff. He came home at 11 p.m., said it went long. He smelled like wine and wood smoke. I almost believed him, until I did the laundry and found a receipt in his jacket. Dinner for 2. Candlelight. The same restaurant we went to on our first anniversary. I didn't confront him. I wish I could say I did. But the truth is, I folded the receipt and tucked it away. I wasn't ready. I wanted to believe it meant nothing. That maybe I was being paranoid. Then his phone buzzed while he was in the shower. Chloe. Last night was perfect. Same time next week? My stomach sank. He came out moments later. I asked, "How's Chloe doing?" Casually, as if the message didn't exist. He smiled. Still struggling, but I'm helping her through it. I smiled back. That night, I stared at the ceiling while he slept beside me. Peacefully, mouth slightly open, like he hadn't shattered anything. I started paying attention. The little things. Gas station receipts in places he had no reason to be. Hotel charges billed as conferences that didn't exist. The jewelry store purchase I never received. A pink hoodie in the backseat of his car. Not my size, not mine. And then came the email. No name, no subject. Just 4 photos. Dan and Chloe at a cabin, laughing by a fire, holding hands on a trail, kissing. In one photo, she's wearing a necklace. I recognized it. I paid for it. Everything inside me went still. No tears, no screams. Just a cold, quiet voice whispering, "You helped her. You paid for her to take your place." I looked at the folder of bank transfers, the receipts I'd saved, the messages I now couldn't unsee. I'd been proud of my kindness, of my empathy, of my ability to support a young woman in need. But what I'd really done was fund my own betrayal. When Dan got home that night, he hugged me, kissed my forehead, told me he loved me, and I smiled. Because I'd already decided. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to destroy him. Quietly. People expect the moment you find out your partner's cheating to be explosive. Screaming, crying, throwing things. Mine was silent, controlled. Because deep down, I knew that confronting Dan too soon would only give him time to lie, to twist things, to get ahead of me. And I wasn't about to let that happen, so I let him think I didn't know. I kissed him goodnight, I packed his lunch, I listened to him ramble about his curriculum review meetings. And all the while, I was documenting everything. The first thing I did was create a private email account. I forwarded every receipt, every questionable charge, every message, every transfer I had made for Chloe. Then I started digging deeper into our shared accounts. I went back months, even years. There were so many patterns I had missed. Hotel names recurring every 3 to 4 weeks. Uber rides that started near campus and ended nowhere near his faculty meetings. Gift purchases on days he swore he was too busy to meet for lunch. One charge stood out. A jewelry store downtown. I'd never received anything from there. The date matched with one of Chloe's Instagram posts, where she was wearing a delicate gold necklace shaped like a leaf. I zoomed in on the photo, the same necklace I found the receipt for. He gave it to her, paid for with our joint account. My money. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. This wasn't some emotional affair or misguided support. He was in a relationship with her, and I was footing the bill. I called a private investigator the next day. I told her everything, how I'd been sending money to help the student, how my husband was the middleman, how I suspected he was having an affair. I showed her the email, the photos, the transactions. She didn't even blink. "Let's find out the rest," she said. And so we did. While Dan played the perfect husband, I was collecting proof. He said he had a conference in Denver. I smiled, wished him luck, packed him snacks for the flight. The investigator followed him straight to a boutique hotel 2 towns over. He wasn't alone. Photos came in by the hour, Dan and Chloe checking in, holding hands, sitting at dinner, sharing a kiss outside a bookstore, like they were on some romantic weekend getaway, like they were the ones who belonged together. There was one photo that broke me more than the rest. They were sitting on a bench. She was curled into him, her head on his shoulder, and he was reading to her from a book I gave him on our anniversary. I think I stared at that photo for 30 minutes, not out of sadness, but out of rage so cold it felt surgical. He wasn't just cheating. He was repurposing our marriage, our memories, the gifts I gave, the money I earned, for her. Like I was nothing more than the bank funding his second life. And the best part, he came home 2 days later, wrapped his arms around me and said, "I missed you." I almost laughed. That night, while he slept beside me, I updated the shared folder with all the new evidence. Dates, locations, photos, statements. I even included side-by-side comparisons of what he told me versus where he actually was. I wasn't rushing. I was building, brick by brick, lie by lie. And every time he smiled at me, every time he said, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me," I smiled right back. Because soon, he'd understand exactly what he lost. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more piece to play, something poetic, something cruel in its quietness. And it started with Chloe. After weeks of pretending not to know, I finally decided how this would end. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw his things out a window or post a rant online. I wanted something quiet, precise, undeniable. So one night over dinner, I looked up from my plate and said, "You know what I was thinking? I've never really met the students you've helped me support. Maybe I should. Wouldn't it be nice to host a little thank you dinner for them?" Dan paused, mid-bite. I smiled like nothing was strange. Just a small group. A few of the students who've been through a lot. The ones you've always mentioned. I can reserve that restaurant downtown with the private room. It'll be intimate, classy. I'll cover it, obviously. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that could be nice." "I think so too," I said. "You've always said Chloe was one of your most promising students. She should definitely be there." That did it. He blinked just a little too long. "Chloe? Yeah, sure, if you'd like." "Of course I'd like," I said softly. "You've helped her so much. It'd be good for her to feel appreciated." He agreed, probably thought he was still in control. Probably thought I was just being generous again. How fitting. I made the reservations, sent formal invitations. 2 other students I had genuinely helped were on the list, along with a couple of my coworkers to act as neutral background noise. Dan arranged for Chloe to come. He really thought I was thanking him, but I was setting the table for his collapse. The night of the dinner, I dressed deliberately, not flashy, just elegant enough to look like someone in full command of her life. The restaurant was perfect. Low lighting, warm wood, private enough to feel special, but open enough for witnesses. Dan looked relaxed, too relaxed. Chloe arrived 15 minutes late. She wore a pale blue dress and soft curls, the picture of innocence. She hugged Dan lightly, smiled at me with a kind of sweet awkwardness. "Thank you for the invite, Mrs. Powell. This is really lovely." I smiled back. "Please, call me Amanda." We ate, we drank. I made toast to potential, to growth, to how proud I was of the people in this room. Chloe blushed every time I mentioned quiet strength and students who overcome obstacles. Dan beamed like a mentor, basking in the success of his pupil. Then came dessert. I stood, tapped my glass. "I just want to say something before the night ends," I said warmly. "Something I've been thinking about for a while." The room quieted. I've been fortunate. I have a good career, a stable life, and over the years, I've made a personal commitment to help students who need a little financial support. Not for recognition, just to give someone the break I wish I had when I was younger. Chloe shifted slightly in her seat. I saw it. Dan stared straight ahead. "Some of the people in this room have received that help," I continued. "And I never expected a thank you. But tonight, I'd like to give a special one in return." I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope. I placed it gently in front of Chloe. "This is for you," I said. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside were copies of payment records, screenshots of transfers, a photo of her wearing the gold necklace Dan bought with our joint credit card, receipts from the cabin getaway, printouts of texts. One was highlighted. "Chloe, last night was perfect. Same time next week?" Her face went pale. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I turned to Dan. "This entire past year, I let you lie to me. I let you cheat. I even paid for the hotel rooms." He stood up, stammering. "Amanda, it's not—" "It is," I said. "It's exactly what it looks like." The table was silent. My coworkers looked horrified. One of the students was staring down at her fork like it might save her from the tension. I took a breath. "Chloe," I said gently, "you're not the first young woman who fell for a man who made her feel special. But you are the first one I've ever personally sponsored to sleep with my husband." She looked like she wanted to disappear. Dan tried again. "Can we talk about this? Privately?" "No," I said, stepping back. "We had a private life. You made it public the moment you lied to my face with her perfume on your collar." Then I turned to the table. "Thank you all for coming," I said calmly. "The bill is covered. Enjoy the rest of your evening." And I left. I didn't look back. I left the restaurant and walked 2 blocks before I even looked up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. For the first time in months, I wasn't pretending anymore. Not for Dan, not for anyone. That night, I checked into a hotel. I already had a bag packed in my trunk, just in case, and a folder in my email with everything I needed to move forward. Screenshots, bank records, photos, my attorney's contact, a drafted divorce petition. The next morning, I sent Dan a message with 2 lines. "Please direct all further communication through my lawyer. I'll be filing today." I didn't wait for a response. He tried, of course, called, texted, left voicemails. At first it was apologies, then excuses, then accusations. "You ambushed me. You humiliated me in public. You're blowing this out of proportion." That one made me laugh. Quietly, bitterly. Because no, Dan, I didn't blow anything out of proportion. I just laid your proportions bare in front of everyone else. Chloe didn't reach out, not that I expected her to. From what I heard, she dropped the class a week later and stopped showing up to campus altogether. A mutual acquaintance told me she withdrew from the university by the end of the semester. Apparently, once Dan's protection was gone, so was her confidence. As for Dan, well, it turns out when you cheat on your wife and she funds the affair, the court doesn't take kindly to it, especially when you leave a paper trail as thick as a novel. The divorce moved quickly. I had every receipt, every transaction, every lie lined up and time-stamped. He tried to argue for partial assets. My lawyer responded with a spreadsheet labeled, "Where her money went." He walked away with less than half of what he thought he'd get. No house, no car. Just enough to start over somewhere else. Not with Chloe, though. That ended too. Apparently, it's not as fun when your secret girlfriend becomes a public scandal, especially one who's now jobless, schoolless, and doesn't have someone else's credit card to fall back on. But none of that really mattered to me, because while they scrambled to explain, defend, justify, I rebuilt. At first, it was small. I repainted the guest room. I changed my phone number. I bought myself flowers every Sunday. Then it was bigger. I went back to therapy, booked a solo trip to Spain, laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. People always ask if I regret being generous, if I regret giving Chloe money, if I regret trusting Dan. I don't. Because what I gave came from a good place. And what they did with it? That's on them. Yes, I was kind. Yes, I was blind. But I was never weak. And when the moment came, I didn't crumble. I stood up, I smiled, and I let the truth do the talking.